Good morning and welcome. I call the sixth and final meeting of the House Budget Review Subcommittee on Education to order. At this time, I'd like to ask Rachel to call a roll.
Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Representative Petrie, Representative Reed, Senator Neal, Representative Bowling, Representative Palumbo, Representative Raymond, Representative Riley, Senator West, Representative Baker, Representative Bojanowski,
Here.
Representative Graham, Representative Lewis, Representative Timoney,
Here.
Representative Tipton,
Here.
Co-Chair Deneen,
Here.
Co-Chair Banta,
Here.
Co-Chair McCool.
Here. Thank you. We'll hold on the minutes, approval of the minutes for right now. I'd like to go ahead and ask the Council of Post-Secondary Education to come forth. You all know the routine. Please make sure your little green light's on. Introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation. Thank you for coming here today.
My name is Sean McKiernan, Executive Director of Budget and Finance.
Travis Powell, Vice President General Counsel at CPE.
Bill Payne, Vice President for Finance and Administration, CPE.
Well, thank you all for having us today. We're going to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about asset preservation and the dollars that were allocated in the last session. A little bit about the upcoming request for the next biennium related to asset preservation. Sean's going to take that part of the presentation. Then he's going to kick it off to me. I'll talk a little bit about CP functions and the funding sources that support those functions. Within that presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the additional agency budget requests that we'll be putting forward this session. Talk a little about what we would use that money for for the operations of the organization, and then Bill will take over and he'll talk a little bit about the CP agency budget, current budget, and then the upcoming budget request as well. So. Happy to answer any questions either throughout or at the end, but we'll go ahead and let Sean get started talking about asset preservation.
Good morning. Much of this is going to be a reminder about the asset preservation pool for the current biennium. But just as a little bit of background, in 2005, the Council contracted with VFA to conduct a comprehensive review of the post-secondary education facilities. Evaluators looked at over 700 education and general facilities, and in 2007 they issued their report. The report found that most buildings at the time were over 30 years old, and the condition and utility was consistent with that age. Systems needed upgrading, including heating, ventilation, air conditioning, plumbing, electrical wiring. Many buildings no longer adequately supported the programs that were being housed in those facilities. And they put a price tag of $6.1 billion at that time to bring those state-owned facilities up to industry standards. During the 6 years that followed, a combination of factors resulted in an increase to that amount, inflation and further aging and deterioration of systems. And in 2013, they updated that figure, that $6.1 billion figure, to $7.3 billion. In the enacted state budget, the General Assembly authorized $683.5 million in general fund supported bonds for an asset preservation pool. And the purpose of the pool is to provide funding for projects at our post-secondary institutions. The state also appropriated $16.5 million for a standalone project at KCTCS, and so the total of that investment, $700 million, is it matched very nicely with the council's request for $700 million for the current biennium for asset preservation. And here's a look at how that $683.5 million was distributed among the institutions, roughly $350 million in each year. And the distribution to the campuses was based on share of square footage dedicated to student learning, category 1 and 2 square feet. So that doesn't include auxiliary or research space or hospital, correct. And the enacted budget specifies that at the research institutions, that the required match be 30 cents per state dollar, and that at all other institutions, at the comprehensive universities and at KCTCS, the required match is 15 cents per state dollar. And of course, institutions are authorized to issue agency bonds, but other sources of matching funds can include cash and private funds, grants, other institutional funds. General fund appropriations can't be used as a match.
Can I stop you right there for just a quick
Yes, sir.
question? On that 683 million, you kind of broke it up according to size, campus, universities, and those type of things. Was there any consideration that one university may be in more dire need than another one, and give a little, elevate their request a little bit higher? I just, I can't, and I may be wrong, but I just can't see them all being on the same playing field when you may have somebody that has a little bit more need than the other ones do.
That's very understandable. CPE's request for the current biennium for the allocation of funds was actually based on VFA study identified need, and the General Assembly decided to go a different route. They decided to, this body decided to distribute the funds based on square footage. But either approach is a fair approach.
But I'll just say this, considering the large amount, the $7 billion of deferred maintenance all over the campuses, there's probably not a great way to do it. That's probably as good a way as to do it as any. I mean, there's such a significant need statewide. There's certainly not one campus that's, has a very small portion of that and another that has most. I mean, it's widespread. So that's probably about as good a methodology as any in order to do the allocation.
Yeah, at least it still got out there, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I just wondered if there's any
Yeah.
consideration. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
And
Question?
I'm just following up with the question. As we know, Kentucky State University has a great deal of need for just in itself trying to upgrade and repair some of the stuff that's been neglected, partly because we have not, meaning the General Assembly, has not funded the university in the way it should be. And we also know that from the federal side, about $172 million, the university, the state has not provided in terms of helping the university based on the money that has been appropriated or was given by HBCU for HBCUs. Why? I just looked at it, and it's $8 million, whereas everyone else, and you've explained it, the General Assembly. And so I guess I'm just talking to the members of the General Assembly, but also trying to fight for Kentucky State University. Why, hopefully, that we can address this when we come back in session and we look at the budget, because there are needs in which the university needs to improve as well as expand in order for the university to thrive in the way that it should be. And so if you can address that, I'd personally appreciate it. I think you've really said exactly why and where and what we've done based on what we've done here in the General Assembly.
Well, certainly, if we can be helpful in that regard. I mean, I personally, as you know, have been working, on House Bill 250 and KSU, and can speak to some of the, pressing needs of asset preservation on that campus, and I can certainly would be happy to outline in more specifics what those needs are if there was any if you're interested in putting forth another request or anything of that nature. But yeah, the needs there are significant. They are leveraging, and Sean will talk about that, they are leveraging the current asset preservation dollars there that they have and using those well. They're also leveraging some of their land grant funding to the extent that, certain things it can be used for. If those buildings are, for land grant purposes, they're leveraging those funds to help with some asset preservation and some expansion of current buildings there too. So they're making the most of what they have, but we can certainly look further at what other needs might be necessary as well.
Saying that, I hope the General Assembly, as we prepare to present our budgets and to pass the budget, that we and I know members on this committee are working very hard with the university. I just want to keep it in the front so that we don't forget that we need to invest more into the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The comments that Representative Graham made are in reference to a letter the U.S. Department of Education sent out to the governor earlier this year. I've read that letter. And if you go into that, there are several universities across the country, HBCUs, and it identifies a shortfall, some of them well over $1 billion. There was in 2022, there was an article that referenced a Forbes analysis on this same subject. It came up with a total almost identical to the U.S. Department of Education letter, but there is a significant discrepancy in their analysis at Kentucky State University. They say the shortfall over 30 years is $1.66 million. So we need to dig into those numbers and find out exactly what the situation is, how the rationale, how those numbers came from. And we all recognize that our HBCUs all across the country here at Kentucky State have dire needs. Mm-hmm. We responded to that in 2022 with House Bill 250. But we need to, I think when we look at this, when letters are sent out, we need to dig deeper. Mm-hmm. This is my point I'm trying to make, and make sure we've got accurate data. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, proceed, please. Thank you.
I won't read this next slide to you, but I will point out that middle bullet. There's a provision in the budget that allows for projects that preserve, renovate, or renew state-owned and operated residential housing facilities to be funded through these asset preservation pools, and that's an important difference between this round of asset preservation pool funding and previous rounds. Previous rounds, institutions were only able to address education and general facilities, and recognizing the needs that many of our institutions have, our universities have, to update university-owned and operated residential housing facilities. Recognizing that need, a provision was put into the budget to allow that those projects to be funded. And institutions very interested in having that language included if there is another round of funding for asset preservation upcoming biennium. And just a note about the expenditures. The pool funds are distributed to the institutions allocated, but the funds are actually transferred using an expenditure and reimbursement approach. So institutions expend their own funds, and then they seek reimbursement from the state. And that's a very common procedure, and the institutions are fully aware of that and on board. As expenditures are made, institutions submit reimbursement requests to the council and to the state budget office, and the requests identify the project expenditures made during the period and the state funds requested, and identify the campus match. So using this approach, there's never an opportunity for the institutions to fail to meet their match. CPE staff reviews the requests and verifies that the projects are consistent with the council's guidelines and also with the statute, of course. And here's an update of the $792 million in projects that the institutions identified that are planned with the asset preservation pool funding. The total funding, so the state bonds and the institutional match, the total is 822. Funding is spoken for in projects that are that have begun and that are in various stages. So $14.3 million in projects. Those projects are completed. $161 million in projects are in the construction phase. $9 million in projects are being bid or rebid, and design and planning. The majority of projects are in the design and planning phases, and University of Louisville, the way that they set up their list of projects, they're in various stages and didn't have a really good way to categorize those projects. So that, as you can see, $100 million in various stages. So the campuses are very active in drawing down funds, very active in pursuing these projects and putting this money to use. And I think they would want me to remind you that so much work has to be done before money is spent. And that in a lot of cases with the construction industry, the way that it is, a lot of projects are rebid or they're bid and then the cost comes in and it's decided to redesign the project to get the cost lower, and then it's bid again. So there have been some delays, but for the most part, the projects are very much underway.
Thank you. I've got a question, but before we do that, I need to quickly see if we can go ahead and approve the minutes. Then we'll come back for questions. So
Okay.
What?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And I appreciate this presentation on this, and I know it's a lot more work, but if you had the opportunity to share your next budget request and do, identify those areas of high need, would that be a possibility as well from CPE?
In high need of like asset preservation,
Yes.
like the most pressing needs.
Yes.
We could certainly
And I'm
go
just
back to
asking
the
a question.
absolutely, Sean. I mean, Sean works with the campuses all the time, and we could certainly get the priority list from the campuses on the highest priority for asset preservation after, of course, this current funding cycle. I think that's something we could most certainly put together.
Would that just be, it'd be helpful to me. I don't know
Certainly.
if it will,
Sure.
how far that would go, but just be helpful to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please proceed. Thank you.
And Travis is going to talk about CPE functions and funding sources.
Can I do that with this?
Yeah.
Sweet.
There
All
you
right. So CPE, obviously, as an agency of state government created by statute, so everything that you see here in our functions and responsibilities are at least broadly covered by some statutory directive. The bulk of those requirements come in KRS 164.020, but we have responsibilities sprinkled out through the entirety of the KRS. And also we have some grant programs too, and then we have to meet some federal requirements as a requirement of receiving those grant funds. But for such a small agency, and we'll talk about the size of the agency, our scope is really large. We have a few years ago, I embarked on a project to set forth a compliance spreadsheet to talk about all the different requirements of CPE, all the things that we're responsible for, whether it be reporting, functional operations of the organization, reports to you guys, data requests, that sort of thing, and it's about 200 items long. So it's quite an endeavor, and we manage it with a small amount of people, but like to think we do a really good job with it. So these are the main areas in our organization that are structurally that make up CPE. And we'll go through each one of those on the following slides. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
I forget you can do it. Okay. So the structure of this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have now, and then where the funding sources are, and then I'll talk a little bit about what what we would use with the dollars requested. Now, Bill's actually going to talk about the requested dollars and talk about it at a broad level, but we thought it made more sense to talk about the current functions of the organization and then what we would do with the additional funds that we're requesting for agency support, about $3 million a year of recurring expenses, as we go through talking about what the agency actually does now. So currently, this is Strategic Initiatives and Leadership. This is Dr. Thompson's office. His office, and then these are the number of staff that we have. Planning and accountability, of course, CPE is responsible for a statewide strategic agenda for higher education. It's a comprehensive document that sets forth all the priorities and goals for higher education in the state. Throughout the year, we have data and research and analytics supports that and does other research items as well. We set targets for each of our institutions on student success, making sure that we enroll more students, that we get them to the end of the finish line, whether they're in a 2-year program, a 4-year program, or certificate program. We monitor all those to produce more graduates and their time to degree. And so we have a lot of metrics that we keep all our institutions accountable for, and they all present before our board at each one of their quarterly meetings. We have different universities come in and report their progress toward those metrics, so these staff manage that process. We're doing data research all the time on a variety of subjects. We're about to finish up the Senate Joint Resolution 98 process. That office handled that project along with some planning and accountability staff. It was a massive endeavor. Really excited to talk about that. It's about to conclusion, and I know some of you all have heard a little bit of a preview of what that might look like. We didn't receive any additional funding to complete that project. It was all managed in-house, and our folks have done an excellent job. And we're always getting directives to do this, but also on our own volition too, to come up with and analyze student debt. We had a dual credit report to see the value of that the dual credit scholarship and how well that's doing and meeting our goals of bringing students into college and getting them to finish earlier. So that office is very busy. In addition, we have our board relations and government affairs staff. You all work with our government affairs staff on a regular basis. Jennifer Fraker. Our board relations, we have a 13-member citizen board with 1 faculty member and 1 student member. So we have somebody that helps manage those meetings and our membership there. Those are all general fund dollars. We also have a healthcare workforce initiative. We received funding in the prior biennium, in this current biennium rather, to mostly for incentive funds to help move forward healthcare workforce initiatives. And most of those dollars were sent out through a grant process, but we do have a few staff that are helping to manage that internally. Those are supported by federal funds. Well, what we're requesting in the $3 million that we're requesting for agency support, we would expand our post-secondary board education and orientation. Representative Graham, I believe you were heavily involved in that legislation that requires CPE to train all board members across all our campuses. We do that initial training, we meet our obligations, but one of the requirements of that bill is that we provide continuing education for these board members, and we still do that, but we could really expand in that area and help to better train our board members to be better leaders on our campuses, have more financial accountability from the individual boards, just how to provide better leadership to their institutions on an ongoing basis. And we can really improve that. If we had more staff to do that, we can really build out that area more and really fully meet the intent of that legislation. I mentioned research and data and analytics. We could use more staff in that area as well. Chair McCool, we get questions all the time about, can we do this? What about this? Can you look into this for us? And we do really well with that, but we can do actually more. And with more staff, we could actually churn that information out more quickly and give you, almost real-time information about what's going on and answering your questions. CPE and the president is the chief advisor on higher education to the General Assembly and the governor. And we work hard every day to meet that. But you guys need data to support the initiatives that you want to put forward, and this would help to expand that area and get you the information that you need more broadly and more quickly. Adult-focused programs and services. We've got to engage our adult learners better at CPE. We only send, right now, we're working on our traditional age population because we're only sending about 50% of our kids on to college. We're working really hard at that, but we also have a huge population of adults that need to be upskilled or reskilled to meet the needs of the 21st century workforce. So we would use staff to help better engage that group of individuals. And then workforce development initiatives. One of the trends that we've seen at CPE is we're really trying to connect our K-12 all the way through to higher education and then on into the workforce. So it's a continuous model starting at students when they are in preschool and all the way into the workforce. And we want our citizens in Kentucky to be learning all the time, reskilling as they need to meet the needs of their workforce so they can better provide for their families. And we've touched on this in some areas. It's such a huge area, and if you think about all the different professions that someone can go into, you could probably hire an almost unlimited number of individuals in those areas. But we would be able to better serve, better connect our work with the workforce with some more folks that could really focus on that directly. Academic excellence and student success. This is one of the core functions of our agency. Academic policy and development. We approve all academic programs for all our campuses. We also have a program review process where we're actually evaluating programs on a regular cycle to make sure that they're meeting the needs of students and they're meeting the needs of the workforce. CPE actually has the approval to discontinue programs at our institutions. We've never taken action on ending a program at any of our institutions, but through our review process, institutions have taken upon themselves in order to close programs that are either low enrolled or just not meeting the outcomes that the workforce needs. Those are general fund dollars. We also have the Student Success Collaborative. That is funded through a James Graham Brown grant that we have with that private philanthropic organization. This organization has really been a boots on the ground initiative to provide our campuses with support on how to help students be more successful in completing their degrees. And so we have communities of practice, different groups of campuses setting forth and coming up with best practices and then talking about ways to implement those best practices on our campuses to help students be more successful.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned, and that's good, but if you got that deadline date of 2024 that it runs out, hopefully the universities and colleges are finding ways that they can carry that forward.
Yes. Well, that's part of what we're going to be asking you all to help us with.
Okay.
But they are. I mean, they're already working on this, and this is something we're funding this with private sources. We're hoping to get the grant renewed. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about this. We are asking for some general fund dollars to bring those staff in to be on regular recurring funds. But we'd like to be able to take those grant dollars and actually use those to incentivize some of the best practices that we're doing on our campuses, help campuses scale up and build up so they can actually implement those and use those for seed money in order to help get those initiatives off the ground. And the nice thing about these, they need some money to get started, but they're actually money makers, right? Because they keep students enrolled and then they continue it onto their degrees. And we don't lose students this way. So actually, we don't like to think about it in terms of dollars. It's the main reason is to help the students, but they actually do pay for themselves. But sometimes they need some money to help get them started. And so we'd like to use those grant dollars more for those incentives rather than for, to pay for the staff to help with the collaboration. So, and then we also have the Kentucky Virtual Library. We supplement that somewhat with general fund dollars, but we also charge a fee. All our public universities, all private colleges are part of this. Some of our high schools, school districts are part of our virtual library. And it's just what it sounds like. It provides library resources online to various member organizations, and it also is an interlibrary loan process as well that we manage that actually transports physical library resources to the different participating libraries. The additional investment there, like I said, I've already talked about the Student Success Collaborative replacement dollars. Another staff person to help with transfer policy and coordination. So, we want to help students transfer from those 2-year degrees and onto those 4-year degrees. We'd like to have a staff person to help focus on that more broadly. Academic program oversight and coordination. We mentioned work-based learning, competency-based education, and AI. And AI is the big one. It's in the news. We need to be ahead of the game on this and figure out it's coming, whether we want it to or not, or how we feel about that. It's here and it's going to continue. And I think we need to figure out how to embrace it and how to leverage that to our benefit on our college campuses, because it's here. And we'd like to have some folks that are dedicated to that as well. In Kentucky, we'd like to be, the leader in these areas, and we want to be proactive and not reactive. And so this would help with that. Finance and administration, you're looking at a couple of the folks there that make up that 3 right here on either side of me. They do a tremendous amount of work. I'll talk nicely about them while they're sitting here next to me, but they really do. Talking about the work that you just heard Sean discuss on our capital projects and our responsibilities there, approving all capital projects of our institutions and managing this asset preservation process, which, as he described, is a very labor-intensive to make process. We also developed a biennial budget. We set tuition and fees every year. Our performance funding administration just finished a performance funding work group meetings and talking about the changes that we're hoping to put forward to that model. And that, Bill, it seems like that group meets it's every 3 years, but it feels like we're talking about that on a yearly basis. Trust funds, bucks for brains, and those type of items, and endowment match programs and that sort of thing. They manage that as well. It also manages our administrative services unit. We're a state agency, so we have all the same things that other state agencies have, and managing grants and contracts and purchasing, logistics, and agency and budget administration. Additional investment. One area that I think we can really add more value in, and the 3 here are really tied together, is more financial planning and analysis, and more analysis on state financial aid and affordability. That's what we hear when we go out and talk to students and families. Is folks are worried about the cost of college and how are they going to pay for college, and we really need to dive deeper into that to talk about to give some thoughts about state financial aid. Make more strategic investments in higher education and make those requests to this body, and just how to help campuses be more efficient, how to, as a state, how to keep an eye on finances of institutions. We're all aware of the instances that we've had in the last couple of years related to that. How can we more closely monitor this situation so that we can get ahead of these, and again, not be reactive, but be proactive, and raise a flag and say, hey, we're not to a point where there's a problem yet, but we see where this might be going, and we want to make sure that folks are aware so we can try to head this off before it gets into some of the situations that we've seen recently. P20 policies and programs. The Commonwealth Education Continuum. That's a group that really focuses on, again, that K-12 through that pre-K through the workforce, and really how to make sure that those pipelines are seamless throughout individuals throughout those different processes, and making sure that along the way that those students are learning what they need to do in order to progress to the next step. That group has met based on board action by both our board and the department and the Kentucky Board of Education. We're looking to hopefully get that codified at some point, and we've been talking to some of you folks about that. So we work really hard, and that's been a really great group. We're getting folks together that don't often talk to each other. I think Representative Tipton, you've served on that group as well. It's been great to get all those folks in a room. It's a quite large group, and again, it spans that whole gambit of individuals from different areas of government and education to really have conversations about what the students need and what the state needs. And it's good to get those folks in a room, and we're hoping to build that out a little bit more. The Kentucky Advising Academy and dual credit oversight. Our Advising Academy provides a toolkit to advisors in high schools about how to get kids into college and the information they need to know on affordability, how to apply and how to make those connections to get folks into college. Summer bridge programs, we find those to be incredibly successful in helping students to transition from high school into college and get them prepared. We target folks that might be underprepared, not necessarily academically, but perhaps socially, before they enter college. Helps to get them ready, and we find that those programs are extremely significant or successful in helping actually the retention and graduation of those students. Gear Up Kentucky, this is a federally funded program. It provides services in underserved middle schools and high schools in the state, and to help create a college-going culture. We actually have boots on the ground and staff in those school districts to help students and families. All students get benefit from this. So if you're a district that qualifies as a Gear Up district, and we're working in that it's not just individual students that may need a need, it's actually in the entire school district or entire school that gets the benefits of these services. They're, like I said, boots on the ground and interacting with students on a daily basis to help create that college-going culture and actually following them into their first year of college to help them to be successful. We'd like some additional support for the Kentucky Advising Academy and dual credit oversight. I've had conversations with some of you all individually about dual credit and dual credit scholarship program and what's being offered in our high schools. Is that the type of college programming that should be provided? Are these the courses that they all do transfer, but there's a difference between transfer and transferring into a pathway that's actually being useful for the individual. So we make sure we're offering those dual credit courses that the students actually need for college, and not some of these electives. And so we need to have a more focus on that. We could really build out this Advising Academy as well. Such an important work that they've done, again, just to help create that college-going culture and help students and family understand what it takes to go to college. This is my unit. Legal, human resources, compliance, and licensure. Those don't really seem to go together, but I guess under me they do. So I manage all the legal responsibilities of our agency, HR, and compliance. I mentioned our compliance requirements earlier, and we're monitoring those on a monthly basis. Our DEI and equity, DEI policy and program assessment, we're required to assess equal educational opportunity goals so that institutions can offer new academic programs. So that we have a group of staff that manage that statutory process. KSU oversight that I just discussed, which we received additional appropriation on. We also license all the private colleges to operate in the state. Some of you all may not be aware of that, but any institution, nonprofit or for-profit, offering a bachelor's degree or above, we license all their programs to operate in Kentucky. We have 3 staff that are dedicated to that. We've had some, over my 12 years that I've been at CPE, we've had some private institutions close, so we've had to manage that process. We've organized transfer fairs. We have institutions are required to put up a surety bond in case when they close, in case students need refunds for tuition that they haven't paid for. So we manage that process, but we set a really high bar for entry, and so and use really high standards in order to operate in the state. I think we handle licensure better than any other state in the country, but it's a lot of work, and but we have a lot of 3 dedicated folks to that. We use licensure fees for that, but it doesn't. Our fees that we charge don't quite cover all the operations of that group. The other area, external affairs and communications. It's just what it sounds like. We're communicating all the time. The value of higher education, the work that that's being done on our campuses, the work that CPE is doing. Just getting the message out there, letting folks know about the resources that we offer at CPE, to help students better understand college, affordability, what programs that we offer in Kentucky, what are the potential workforce outcomes of those programs, what can I expect to earn when I graduate, all those things. We're communicating those messages, all the time. And now Bill's going to talk, unless anybody has any questions, Bill will talk about our CPE agency budget.
Thank you, Travis. And
Hold
before I
on.
begin,
Got a
does anyone
question.
have any questions?
Yes, got a question from co-chair.
I want to circle back to the Kentucky Advising Academy on page,
Can you go
I
back?
guess, slide
Sorry.
19, I
Yeah, I
guess.
thought I was going backwards, but I
Yeah.
hit forward. So
We
How
only
often-
we only go forward at CP.
Yeah. On the Kentucky Advising Academy, can you share with us, where it talks about professional development for school counselors and resource center staff? I mean, this is the front line to advise high school students of opportunities. How often is that training available to those counselors? Is that a part of their professional development requirement for their districts, or is this optional training, or is this mandatory?
I believe it's optional training now. Within the districts, they may handle it differently. But this is we have online modules that they can access at any time. So it's not just a one-off or a couple twice a year kind of thing. It's an online toolkit that's available for them to use at any time. We are proactive and we are going out and meeting those counselors, and we do have meetings from time to time. But the materials are available in real time all the time.
We have quite a bit of turnover as high school counselors. People rotate in, rotate out. They're new counselors coming out of the classroom,
Yes.
getting degrees in counseling, first-time counselors. Some retire, but that is always a revolving door of counselors, school counselors. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is this type of training is the very front line on exposing these students to what is available to them. And I see a really strong need for more marketing in that department, with the FAFSA forms and filling out all the steps necessary to go to college and to promote that. I just see in several areas a weakness there that optional training for counselors is probably, in my opinion, not getting it done.
Yeah.
And
Well-
that needs to be a mandatory part of their professional development, because I believe they are the frontline players here.
Yeah, we would certainly support that, and that's one of the reasons why we made the online toolkit available, at any time. And we're trying to get the word out to districts that this is available. And you're absolutely right about the revolving door. And it's not even that necessarily in some districts that the people leave. They may assign this responsibility to somebody else. And a lot of times they're doing a whole bunch of other stuff too.
Amen. That's the truth.
And that's unfortunate as well, because if at all possible, they need to have somebody focused on this as their primary responsibility. So, we would certainly support that. Have the materials out there and available for folks to use.
I
Trying
would
to
just like
communicate
see
that out.
maybe seeing some numbers of your attendance
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
of those training opportunities. Just seeing some numbers on our counselors that are and our family resource center staff members that are coming to these trainings, and how often they're offered regionally or online, or however you're offering them. But I think that would provide us with a little bit of oversight and insight, really, for accountability, and to say, okay, no wonder we're not seeing these numbers increase, because they're not getting the training they all need, and that is translating into misinformation or lack of information going to those individuals. So I just would like to see maybe your attendance rates on some of those trainings and when they're offered. That would help us kind of get a bigger picture.
Absolutely, we'll get you all the information we can on this,
Okay,
on the
thank
topic.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Tipton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Co-Chair Deneen, I think, brought up a great point that I think you don't know what you don't know. And it's not only students, it's parents, and helping them, guide them through this process. Now, I know there are other counselors in this area. I believe Kia does counseling in this. I guess my question is, How much coordination and cooperation is there among the agencies who are doing this type of counseling? Is there overlap? Are there gaps? And could the agencies work better together to make this happen?
We can. This is relatively new. This is, we started this maybe 2 years ago. So this is a new process. We're using those ARPA funds to do this. We try to, not to supplement what's already done and overlap, but we feel like there's a huge need. We absolutely can do a better job coordinating with Kia and understanding a little bit better about what they're doing. That's already starting with Joe Carroll Ellis and on board, somebody that we worked with at her prior stint at Kia, but also working for you all in LRC. So that process has already started. We can better coordinate, but this is still pretty new, but we can do more.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, good morning. I know we've had a lengthy presentation already, but I want to take just a few minutes to share some information about the council's agency budget and our funding recommendation for the upcoming biennium. In this slide, this shows CPE's current general fund budget. We do have some other funding sources, grant funds, federal funds, and unfortunately, a number of those federal funds are time limited, and some of those grant funds are coming to an end. And so that's one reason for one of the recommendations we're going to make for $3 million in additional operating funds. But the point I wanted to make with this slide, you can see that our total general fund budget is $14.9 million. Only about half of that covers our statewide coordinating board function. That's under that heading of operating funds and KSU oversight. So that $7.9 million does include $750,000 that was appropriated to Travis for the KSU oversight function. It was a total of $1.5 million over the current biennium, but $750,000 is included in that $7.9 million. $3.6 million, or 25%, for the Technology Trust Fund. That includes funding for the Kentucky Post-Secondary Education Network, which supports our fiber infrastructure in the state, the Kentucky Regional Optical Network, and also the Kentucky Virtual Library. $3 million, or 20%, for ovarian cancer screenings and for spinal cord and head injury research. Those are pass-through dollars. All of that funding goes to UK and U of L to conduct those ovarian cancer screenings and to do research on spinal cord and head injuries. Next slide, please. In terms of our additional budget requests for the upcoming biennium, Travis has already mentioned the need for some additional dollars for higher education coordination and management. We're requesting $3 million in recurring additional funding each year of the upcoming biennium for that purpose. That's going to help support 25 additional staff and related operating expenses at the council. We're also requesting $20 million each year of the upcoming biennium for incentive grants to strengthen workforce preparation and economic growth, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail about that request here in just a moment. We are requesting for we also are including a request for continuation funding for KSU oversight. You provided essentially $750,000 each year of the current biennium to support that oversight, and we're asking for those dollars to continue in the upcoming biennium, $750,000 each year. We're asking for $50,000 additional dollars in the first year of the upcoming biennium, $100,000 in the second year, to grow the number of SREB doctoral scholars in that program. The Doctoral Scholars Program supports underrepresented minority students who are pursuing doctorates at Kentucky institutions. We currently have $50,000 in our budget for that. That supports 2 doctoral scholars by CPE, but those dollars are matched by the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville. So currently, we have $100,000 in total, $50,000 in general fund, $50,000 from UK and U of L to support 4 doctoral scholars. We're asking for an increase. We want to expand the number of scholars supported from 4 currently to 12. And then lastly, our SREB dues are increasing, and we're asking for $10,000 additional dollars each year of the upcoming biennium to accommodate that. Just a little bit more detail about each of those requests. I already mentioned the higher ed coordination and management request is $3 million each year of the upcoming biennium. That's going to allow us to expand our role in connecting higher education and workforce and economic development to accommodate some of those P20 transitions that Travis talked about. We think it's vitally important that we expand our finance and administration staff and be able to begin to monitor the financial health of our institutions and the transparency of those finances going forward. We all know, what has happened in terms of some of the recent events at KSU and at Northern, where some unexpected deficits occurred in their budgets. This would allow us to stay on top of that and as Travis said, be proactive rather than reactive in keeping track of those institution finances. We also want to expand our ability to evaluate and review academic programming at the institutions. I already mentioned that the $3 million in recurring funding would support 25 positions at CPE each year of the upcoming biennium. 12 of those positions are people that are currently funded with either federal or private grant dollars that we would lose if we don't have some additional funding and transition those people over from federal or grant funds to general fund support. Lastly, this request is needed to effectively respond to growth in our statutory duties and responsibilities and our expanded due diligence and oversight role. The last thing I'll say about this, in 2008, we had 97 staff at CPE that were funded with general fund dollars. We currently have 47 staff. So, we've lost about half of the staff over that time period, but over that same time period, the statutory duties and responsibilities that have been given to CPE have expanded. And so we're asked to do more, and we've been doing more with much less staff. Go ahead, Sean. We're asking for $20 million each year of the upcoming biennium for incentive grants to strengthen workforce participation and economic growth. We're going to create, if the funds are authorized, a fund for higher education and economic development. That fund will provide incentive grants to campuses to increase educational attainment, to strengthen the workforce alignment, foster collaboration, and improve efficiencies and build a more streamlined P20 pipeline. The plan is that CPE would form an advisory committee to provide guidance in the use of those funds. That committee would be comprised of campus leaders and workforce and economic development leaders. Go ahead, Sean. Here's a few examples of how that fund would be utilized. We want to strengthen the behavioral health and other high-demand pipelines, healthcare, education, technology, and manufacturing. I think many of you are aware of the Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. CPE received $10 million in federal funds in the current biennium. Leslie Sizemore and President Thompson have been able to leverage those dollars and brought in another $47 million in private source funds to help support the work of that collaborative. So it's been a very good return on investment. We want to relaunch the Project Graduate to encourage adults to come back and finish their degrees. We've already mentioned several times we want to strengthen that P20 pipeline by funding summer bridge programs and other college readiness initiatives. We want to strengthen transfer and other credit for prior learning strategies. We've already talked about improving the institutional financial transparency, and that would include periodic monitoring of financial ratios, composite financial indices, and market stress tests. That's something that would be done in my shop with me and Sean. Finally, we want to respond to challenges and opportunities posed by technology and artificial intelligence. Next slide, Sean. Here are some additional uses of the fund. Expand competency-based programs to improve access for adults and place-bound students. Incorporate Kentucky graduate profile elements into the general education programs. Improve quality and accessibility of dual credit and other early college programming, and so on. Next slide, Sean. Here is the request for the continuation funding for the KSU oversight. It will support staffing and professional services needed to ensure that progress continues to be made toward the goals that were set forth in KSU's management and improvement plan. And then lastly, we're requesting $60 million in the first year, $110 million in the second year.
60,000.
Oh,
110,000.
yeah, excuse me, 60,000 and 110,000. Thank you, Sean. I just really elevated the amount of our request there.
Scholarships.
The current budget for SRB doctoral scholars, as I mentioned earlier, is $50,000 per year, and that funds one scholar at UK and one at U of L, and UK and U of L match those funds so that we currently have 4 underrepresented minority doctoral scholars in the program. The requesting funding would allow us to expand that up to 12 doctoral scholars, and I've already mentioned that our SREB dues are going up by $10,000 per year.
But that only applies to University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville.
That's correct.
No other university has that.
It's a PhD program, PhD, and they're the only ones that offer PhDs. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that concludes our presentation. And does anyone have any additional questions? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to Travis.
Yeah, just really appreciate you all having us. We've talked a lot today, but obviously there's a lot of good work going on at CPE, and we can do more. But we appreciate your time, and appreciate you having us.
I think Representative Tipton has a question.
Yeah, just real briefly on the doctoral scholar program. 2 years ago, President Pruitt came and saw me and specifically asked it for that increase. We did not get that done in 22. Just let the members know, and we can blame Representative Bojanowski for the $10,000 increase in SREB dues. She's a new member on the SRE board, so congratulations to her on that. Now on the current year, we had, was it $11 million we put in for a healthcare initiative fund? Was that general fund dollars?
10.
It was $10 million.
It was federal.
They were
funds.
federal dollars.
That's correct.
Okay, so you're asking for $20 million in general fund dollars to go toward economic development projects, which would include working on the workforce in all of these areas.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, all areas of workforce and a lot of all the other areas that we mentioned on those slides too wouldn't just be limited to the healthcare. No.
Okay, I've got a question on the going back to asset preservation. We got 30% match for the research, 15 for the comprehensives. Were some of the comprehensives having issues making those matches? And in the current year request, I assume there's an additional current year request for that. Are you including those same 30 and 15 matches, or is there some proposed changes there?
Representative Tipton, what we've heard from about half of our comprehensive university chief budget officers is that if there is any matching requirement for the asset preservation funds in the upcoming biennium, it would be very difficult for them to meet that match. And so what President Thompson and the council determined in terms of the upcoming biennial budget recommendation for asset preservation is to recommend no match, either at the research campus level or among the comprehensive universities.
Okay, and Senator West has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question pertains to the KSU $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. Could you go into a little bit more detail on what that's for, specifically?
Sure. So we received in House Bill 250, we received $1.5 million for oversight It was actually just for the first year, but then in the last session, you all allowed us to spend those dollars over 2 years. So basically $750,000 a year. It goes for mainly for 2 parts: salaries for individuals that we've hired to go over there and provide oversight. I'm spending a significant portion of my time, so it's helping pay for some of my salary. We have individuals. KSU actually stole one of the individuals that we had over there, boots on the ground full time, and she's a vice president now doing student affairs, and she's doing a fantastic job, and I'm really glad they have her. Her name's Dr. Stephanie Mayberry, and she's fantastic. So we're looking to see what we need to fill that position, but we've hired some other folks. I'll just tell you who they are. They're on a part-time basis right now. Greg Rush, who you all have worked with before, he was at KSU for a while, worked for LRC for a little while. And so he's providing some assistance there on helping them get their finances in order. Susan Krause, former treasurer at the University of Kentucky, we brought her on to help. This was before House Bill 250, when CPE was charged to do a evaluation of the issues that happened at KSU and put a report out in 21. The governor did an executive order for that. She helped us to do that. We've kept her on. She's really focusing on getting their endowment in order. Funds right now are not really being utilized out of their endowment. They don't have a huge endowment, but they do have some money, and they don't have all the agreements in place that they need to, the spending policies, that sort of thing. So she's helping to get that geared up. They've probably got about $800,000, $900,000 that they can start spending in the spring that they haven't been able to access because they didn't have the proper things in order there. We've also hired somebody, Dr. Clement Haskins, to help focus on the athletics department there at KSU. And you may say, well, athletics and why are we focusing on that? It's a small part of the institution, but an important part. But when you think about an institution like KSU and how small they are, they're probably, and especially if you include the band in that group, I mean, most of their student body is participating in one of that. So it's, that's an organization that's touching probably 30%, 40% of their students, and so that's a huge part of their student success. So we're providing some assistance there as well. And then also the other part of that is we've hired, per the legislation required us to do an independent evaluation of KSU's progress toward the management and improvement plan goals that we've set. So we've actually hired a firm by the name of Moss Adams to come in and do the independent verification. So quarterly, we have a report on how the institution is doing on the deliverables that have been assigned for that quarter. And they also have some monthly financial deliverables that they have to meet, just closing their accounts on time, providing, clearing out their accounts on, to make sure that they balance each month, that sort of thing. And so they're actually coming in behind KSU and evaluating whether or not they're meeting those goals independent of CPE. So that's what those dollars are being spent for. In 25, we're required to November of 25, we have to do a report on the progress toward the management goal and make some recommendations to the General Assembly. So we'll use those dollars to help pay for that outside entity to come in and provide that analysis for us. So that's what we're using the dollars for.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chairman, real quick. I'm not on A&R anymore, so you may have already made this presentation A&R, and I don't know about it, but where are we? Are we in the forensic audit? Do we have all the results back from that yet or not?
So the APA did an audit on KSU, and that report has been issued. That was done, I think, last spring. Have you seen that?
But
are you talking about the finance?
Weren't we also doing like a private forensic audit through a third party?
Not that I'm aware
maybe
of.
Okay,
no.
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
On it.
Right,
Okay,
and so
okay,
yeah,
I
that
got
was
you.
something I think had been discussed. But yeah, and actually the 21, they're way behind on their audits. But we're
Right.
hoping that by 23 we get the 23 audit should be done on time. They just finished the 21 audit. Well, it's super late, but I mean they're done. That was issued. The board has yet to. They don't approve the audit; they accept it. The board hasn't.
Gotcha.
I think they've gotten a copy, but we've gotten a copy of it. So 21 is done. Really happy about that, Representative Tipton. We've been talking about that for a long time. 22 should be done in another month and a half, and then we're hoping that 23 can be finished maybe January, February, and that's ahead of the March deadline for the feds. So
I guess I was a little confused. I call it a forensic audit, but part of it is actually the actual
Just
audit.
the actual
Like
audit,
the
yeah.
2022 audit, it hasn't, yeah.
Yeah, forensic audit, takes it a step further.
Goes
Yeah,
back,
but
right,
and
right.
goes into really detail on each individual transaction. That hasn't been done, but we should have all the audit. I'm hopeful. When you all are in the early part of the session, I think we'll be caught up.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I don't see any more questions at this time, and for the entire summer, I know we've been aggravating quite a bit, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I'll get with you more about the asset preservation, my view of how it needs to.
Yeah. please do.
And but I also want to thank my co-chair for putting up with me, doing a great job, and all of you all for taking part of this committee. Thank you so much for being part of this. It's very important for you to be here, and very important for you to take part of the activities. I cannot leave without saying thank you to the staff. They really are gold, and I'm so grateful. And thank you for all the service that you provide. Mr. Coacher, do you have any comments? No, I think you said it all right there. Well, with that,